He only needed a fake wife for one night, but when the billionaire CEO looked into her eyes, he realized he might have just hired the woman he could never let go. The late afternoon sun spilled across the glass walls of Nathan Cross's office, staining the Seattle skyline in shades of gold and copper. From his perch on the 40th floor, he should have felt invincible. CEO of a billion-dollar empire, a man whose ideas had reshaped the way small businesses handled cloud computing. Yet the success that had once electrified him now felt like a gilded cage. His phone buzzed again, flashing the name he could never ignore, Emma. His younger sister's voice was always a mix of affection and insistence, but today it carried a sharper edge. She wasn't calling to congratulate him on another deal closed or a software launch. She was calling about her wedding and about the empty chair beside him at the head table. "You're not showing up alone, Nathan," she had said the night before, her words leaving little room for argument. "Mom's already lined up 3 women who want to meet you. Do you want her matchmaking at my wedding, or will you finally bring someone?" The threat of his mother's interference was enough to make his temples throb. Charlotte Cross was relentless, her silver-haired elegance masking an iron will. She wanted Nathan settled, married, producing heirs to carry the Cross name forward. Emma was subtler, her happiness genuine, but she too wanted her brother to find someone before his work consumed him completely. For Nathan, the idea of weathering both of them alone at the wedding was unbearable. He needed a solution, fast. That solution revealed itself days later in the unlikeliest of places, the Belltown Gallery. He remembered her from a charity auction 2 months earlier, a woman who had effortlessly commanded a room filled with billionaires and critics without pander. To either, Sophia Bennett, the senior curator. She wasn't the type to bat her lashes at men like him. She had been efficient, graceful, and entirely focused on the art she was presenting. He had admired that. Now, as he stood in the gallery's cool, echoing space, he felt absurd for even considering what he was about to propose. Sophia looked up from a stack of catalogs as he walked in, her auburn hair catching the light. She wore jeans and a cream sweater, practical but flattering, her green eyes narrowing slightly in polite curiosity. "Mr. Cross," she said, her voice warm but professional. "Here to see the new exhibition?" Nathan exhaled slowly, his usual boardroom confidence deserting him. "Actually, no. I came to speak with you about something unusual." Her brows lifted, but she gestured for him to continue. He explained quickly, almost clinically, about the wedding, about his family's relentless expectations, about needing someone to stand at his side, and finally, the outrageous part. "I'd like to hire you to pose as my wife for the weekend, strictly professional, clear boundaries. In return, I'll pay you $5,000. The words hung in the air like a challenge. For a long moment, Sophia said nothing. Her expression shifted from surprise to calculation, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. She crossed her arms, not defensively, but with deliberate control. "You're asking me to lie to your family? Pretend to be your wife? For money?" "Yes." Nathan's voice was steady, though inside his chest a storm raged. "It's one evening, appearances only. You'll be helping me survive the night without my mother turning it into an ambush." Sophia's instincts screamed to walk away. This was madness, and she knew it. Men like Nathan Cross lived in a world far removed from her own. But as she stood there, the weight of her gallery's unpaid invoices pressed down on her like a stone. Rent was overdue, staff were on edge, and an exhibition she'd promised her artists might collapse if she didn't find funding. $5,000 could cover immediate debts and buy her time. Her fingers tightened on the catalog she still held, the glossy pages bending under her grip. "Boundaries," she said at last, her voice cautious but firm. "If I agree, there will be no confusion. Public gestures only. Holding hands, maybe a kiss on the cheek if necessary. Nothing more. And when the weekend ends, so does the arrangement." Relief flickered across Nathan's face, quickly masked by his usual composure. He extended his hand. "Agreed. One weekend. Nothing more." Sophia hesitated, then took his hand. His palm was warm, steady, and for a brief, dangerous second, something electric passed between them. She ignored it, pulling back quickly. "Fine," she said, her voice quieter now. "But don't mistake this for anything other than business, Mr. Cross." Nathan nodded, though as he looked at her, a thought lodged itself in his mind, a thought he couldn't shake. He had asked for a fake wife. What he hadn't expected was the feeling that this woman, standing in the soft light of the gallery, might just be unforgettable. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel glittered like a palace in the heart of Seattle, its grand ballroom bathed in golden light that spilled from crystal chandeliers. Outside, luxury cars lined the entrance, each one unloading a parade of guests dressed in tuxedos and gowns. Nathan Cross guided his black Mercedes to the curb, every movement precise, every nerve taut with the weight of the evening ahead. But when he stepped around to open the passenger door, the breath caught in his throat. Sophia Bennett emerged not as the weary curator he'd met in a cream sweater days before, but as something altogether different. The emerald gown clung to her with an effortless elegance, beads catching the light like fragments of starlight. Her auburn curls brushed over one bare shoulder, and when her eyes met his, they seemed to glow, alive with quiet strength. "You look—" Nathan's words faltered. He, who had closed billion-dollar deals with a single sentence, stood momentarily disarmed. "You look extraordinary." Sophia's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good, because tonight I'm supposed to be the woman a billionaire would marry." Her tone was steady, but Nathan caught the nervous flicker in her eyes, the quick breath she drew before slipping her hand into his. For an instant, the touch was all business. Then, something shifted, subtle, but undeniable. Inside, the ballroom was a hive of energy. Conversations overlapped in a low hum, champagne flutes clinked, and every head seemed to turn as Nathan entered with the stunning, mysterious woman on his arm. He could feel the weight of 100 gazes pressing against them, whispers darting like sparks. Who is she? Where did she come from? Nathan Cross brought a wife? Emma was the first to break through the crowd, radiant in her ivory gown. Her eyes widened, darting from Nathan to Sophia with equal parts delight and suspicion. "Nathan Cross, you sly man," she said, wrapping him in a quick hug before turning to Sophia. "And this must be your wife I've heard absolutely nothing about." Sophia didn't miss a beat. "Emma, it's a pleasure. Nathan talks about you constantly. I can see why. Your happiness is contagious." She leaned in and kissed Emma's cheek, the warmth in her voice so genuine even Nathan almost believed it. Oliver, Emma's fiancé, shook Nathan's hand and said Sophia's cheek. "Finally, the infamous Mrs. Cross. I was beginning to think you were a myth." The performance was flawless. Sophia's hand lingered on Nathan's arm just long enough to feel natural, her laughter lilting at precisely the right moments. She charmed Oliver's colleagues with ease, debated wine notes with Emma's college friends, even coaxed a smile from Uncle Robert, a man notorious for grumbling through every family gathering. Nathan found himself watching her, forgetting she was acting, forgetting she was hired. And then came Charlotte. His mother swept in like a storm front, navy silk rustling around her tall frame, diamond earrings flashing. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, landed on Sophia with immediate curiosity. "Nathan," she said, kissing his cheek before fixing her attention on the woman at his side. "So, you've been keeping secrets from me." Sophia extended her hand with poised grace. "Mrs. Cross, it's such a pleasure to finally meet you. Nathan speaks of you often, your strength, your dedication to family. I can see now he wasn't exaggerating." Charlotte's eyes softened, suspicion melting into something dangerously close to approval. "Call me Charlotte, and I expect to hear everything. How you met, how long you've been married, why my son has been hiding you." Nathan's pulse hammered. He hadn't prepared for marriage questions, but Sophia, unflinching, stepped in smoothly. "We met at a gallery opening. Nathan surprised me with his knowledge of contemporary sculpture, and by the end of the night I realized he wasn't just a man of business. He has a soul that values art and beauty. From there, well, we didn't waste time. Life's too short." Charlotte laughed, delighted, and Nathan felt sweat prickle his collar. She bought it. They were safe. For now. As the night unfolded, the line between pretense and truth blurred. On the dance floor, Nathan held Sophia close, his hand firm at the small of her back, her perfume, a soft floral note, curling into his senses. They moved as if they had been doing this for years, their steps fluid, their bodies in sync. Sophia tilted her head up, her green eyes catching the chandelier's glow, and for a heartbeat, Nathan forgot the lies. He forgot the money. He only knew that he didn't want to let her go. But as applause rippled around them when the song ended, Nathan noticed the lingering gaze of James Morrison, his business partner, watching Sophia with thinly veiled skepticism. And across the room, Emma whispered something to Oliver, her eyes darting toward her brother with an expression that mixed amusement and worry. The masquerade was working too well, and Nathan Cross realized with a pang of dread that the most dangerous part of this arrangement wasn't getting caught in a lie. It was that the lie was starting to feel like the truth. The ballroom shimmered with candlelight as dinner plates were cleared away, leaving only half-empty wine glasses and the low murmur of conversations. Nathan sat at the head table, Sophia at his side, smiling politely at one of Emma's bridesmaids. To anyone watching, they were the picture of effortless elegance, a powerful man, and the beautiful wife who adored him. It was exactly the illusion he had paid for. but Nathan was beginning to wonder if it was still an illusion at all. Sophia leaned closer, her hand brushing against his as she whispered something teasing about the flamboyant groomsman making a fool of himself at the bar. Her breath warmed his ear, her laughter soft and unguarded. Nathan's pulse jumped, the simple contact burning hotter than it should have. He forced himself to chuckle, to play along, but inside he felt the dangerous tug of wanting it to be real. Across the table, Emma watched with narrowed eyes. She wasn't fooled. She had grown up with Nathan, had memorized every flicker of his moods, every mask he wore, and right now she was watching her brother break his own rule. He was letting someone in. "So," Emma said suddenly, her voice cutting through the conversation. Her smile was sweet, but her gaze sharp as glass. "Sophia, tell me, what's the one thing about my brother that surprised you the most when you got married?" The table quieted. Nathan's throat tightened. Married? They had prepared for dating questions, not this. He opened his mouth to deflect, but Sophia beat him to it. She placed her hand lightly over Nathan's, her eyes locking onto his with something that looked suspiciously like affection. "That he still believes in late-night walks," she said softly. "Everyone sees the CEO, the man buried in work. But when it's just the two of us, he'll grab my hand and say, 'Let's get out, breathe the city air, remind ourselves there's more to life than boardrooms.' That surprised me, and it's one of the reasons I fell in love with him." The words landed like a thunderclap. For a moment, silence wrapped the table. Even Nathan forgot to breathe. He stared at her, heart hammering in his chest, fell in love. She had said it so smoothly, so convincingly, but the way her eyes held his, unwavering, luminous, it didn't feel like a performance. Emma's lips curved into a knowing smile. She clinked her glass. "Well, I'll drink to that, to my brother and the woman who makes him remember there's more to life than work." The toast rippled outward, glasses lifted, laughter resumed, but Nathan sat frozen. Was Sophia acting? Or had she just revealed something neither of them were ready to name? Later, when the music swelled again and couples drifted to the dance floor, Nathan pulled Sophia close once more. This time, the closeness felt dangerous. The silk of her gown whispered beneath his hand as he guided her across the floor. Her eyes lifted to his, and he saw something there that shook him. Vulnerability. Not the mask of a performer, but the raw flicker of a woman feeling a thing she didn't want to admit. "You're good at this," Nathan murmured, his voice low. "Almost too good." Sophia tilted her head, lips curving faintly. "Isn't that what you paid for?" But her tone was softer than the words, and Nathan realized with a start that she was trembling, just barely, in his arms. He pulled her closer instinctively, as though shielding her from something neither of them could name. On the far side of the ballroom, James Morrison watched with cool detachment. Nathan's longtime business partner and friend, James, had always been skeptical of distractions, especially beautiful ones. He leaned against the bar, swirling his whiskey, his sharp eyes cutting across the room like a blade. When Nathan stepped away to take a call, James intercepted Sophia with practiced ease. "So," he said smoothly. "Mrs. Cross, funny, I never got an invitation to the wedding." Sophia froze. James's tone was casual, but his gaze was calculating. He didn't believe the story. She drew herself up, every inch the composed wife. "It was private," she replied. "Very small, family only." James smiled thinly. "Convenient. Nathan doesn't keep secrets from me, until you." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'll figure it out, and when I do, I'll make sure Nathan isn't the one who gets burned." Sophia's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze with a quiet fierceness. "Maybe the problem isn't Nathan keeping secrets. Maybe it's that you think you own a piece of his life that doesn't belong to you." James's eyes darkened, but before he could reply, Nathan returned. His presence alone shifted the air, his hand sliding possessively to the small of Sophia's back. "Everything all right here?" "Perfect," Sophia said with a smile that masked the storm still raging in her chest. But as James walked away, she felt Nathan's hand linger against her spine, steadying her, grounding her. And in that moment, Sophia knew this was no longer just a performance. Somewhere between the champagne toasts and the ballroom whispers, she had crossed the line she swore she wouldn't. The problem was, Nathan might have crossed it too. The wedding had ended hours ago, but the memory of it lingered like smoke in Nathan Cross's penthouse. The glitter of chandeliers, the sound of champagne glasses clinking, the way Sophia's laughter had drawn eyes as though she were born to belong in that world. It all haunted him. He sat on the edge of his leather sofa, tie loosened, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. He should have been relieved. The plan had worked. His mother was charmed. Emma was satisfied, and the endless matchmaking traps had been avoided. By every measure, Sophia had delivered exactly what he paid for. But Nathan couldn't forget the way she had looked at him when she said those words at the dinner table. It's one of the reasons I fell in love with him. It had been too perfect, too sincere, and it left a crack in his armor. He told himself it was part of the act, that she was simply a gifted actress improvising. But deep down, something darker whispered, what if it wasn't? Sophia was experiencing her own restless night across town. She sat curled on her apartment's worn couch, still in the emerald gown she hadn't found the strength to change out of. Her hair spilled across her shoulders and her hands trembled as she replayed the evening over and over. She had been paid to perform, or to deceive, and she had done it flawlessly. But when she saw Nathan watching her on the dance floor, his guarded expression softening, his hands steady against her back, something inside her had cracked too. It wasn't supposed to matter, yet it did. The following Monday, Nathan's world returned to its usual rhythm, board meetings, revenue reports, relentless emails, but none of it felt the same. Every polished presentation blurred into Sophia's green eyes, every discussion about profits echoed with her laughter. By Tuesday, he couldn't take it anymore. He needed to see her, not as an actress, not as his fake wife, but as herself. He called the gallery near closing hours. Sophia, it's Nathan. The pause on the other end stretched too long, heavy with unspoken tension. Finally, her voice came, careful but steady. Mr. Cross, to what do I owe the call? Another wedding you need rescuing from? Dinner, Nathan said simply. His voice was lower than he intended, almost pleading. No contracts, no performance, just dinner, with me, as myself. Sophia closed her eyes, leaning against her desk. Every instinct screamed to say no. Their arrangement was over. She had her money. She could walk away clean. But the truth pressed hard against her ribs. She wanted to see him again. She wanted to know if the spark had been fantasy or something dangerous and real. One dinner, she said finally, somewhere quiet, and if it feels like a performance, I'm leaving. Nathan smiled for the first time in days. Deal. The restaurant he chose was the opposite of the Fairmont ballroom. No chandeliers, no polished marble, no paparazzi lurking nearby. Just a family-run Italian place tucked into a quiet corner of Capitol Hill, its red checkered tablecloths glowing under candlelight. When Sophia arrived, dressed simply in jeans and a soft blue sweater, Nathan felt the air knock out of his lungs. She was even more stunning like this, unpolished, unpretending. You're not wearing a suit, she teased, sliding into the booth across from him. I'm not a CEO tonight, Nathan said, just a man who wanted dinner with you. Suspense hovered in the air, heavier than any deal Nathan had ever negotiated. They spoke cautiously at first, about art, about business, testing the waters. But slowly, the walls began to crack. Nathan confessed how he had grown up after their father's death, shouldering the weight of responsibility while still in college. How every success since then had felt like an obligation, not a choice. Sophia listened, really listened, her eyes soft but sharp, absorbing every word. Then she told him about her parents, teachers who warned her that art would never pay the bills, and how she had pursued it anyway, determined to prove them wrong. How the gallery had become both her passion and her burden, its survival hanging by a thread. Why didn't you tell me at the wedding? Nathan asked quietly. Because you were my employer, not my confidant, Sophia said, her voice tinged with steel. And because I refuse to let anyone, even you, think I'm here for a handout. Nathan leaned across the table, lowering his voice. Sophia, I don't care about appearances. I care about you, and I don't want last weekend to be the end of our story. Her breath caught. The words were dangerous, reckless, but they lit something inside her. She studied him, this man who could buy anything in the world but was looking at her as though she was the one thing he couldn't live without. The waiter returned, breaking the moment, and they both pulled back, but the tension lingered, hotter now, more undeniable. Over shared pasta and glasses of Chianti, they laughed, they teased, they discovered fragments of themselves in each other. And when Nathan walked her back to her apartment later, the quiet between them was no longer awkward but charged with possibility. At her door, Sophia hesitated, her hand resting on the key. Nathan, whatever this is, it can't be about rescues or arrangements. If we continue, it has to be real, equal. Do you understand? Nathan reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. I understand. No contracts, no pretending, just us. For a moment, neither moved. The city hummed around them, headlights streaking across wet pavement. Nathan wanted to kiss her, more than he had wanted anything in years. But he stopped himself, his restraint somehow more intimate than any touch. He kissed her hand instead, softly, deliberately. "Good night, Sophia," he whispered. Her heart pounded as she watched him walk away, and for the first time since this began, she realized she wasn't afraid of the lie anymore. She was afraid of how badly she wanted the truth. The weeks that followed blurred into something Nathan had never experienced before. For the first time in years, he wasn't measuring his days in contracts signed or quarterly numbers. Instead, his calendar filled with things he would never have admitted to his board. A hike through the Cascades with Sophia, an afternoon lost in the quiet corners of the Seattle Art Museum, evenings spent at her gallery where paint and possibility clung to the air. Yet beneath the warmth of their growing closeness, shadows gathered. James Morrison noticed it first. Nathan's longtime partner, sharp-eyed and pragmatic, had always trusted Nathan's discipline. He had seen his friend resist every distraction, every temptation that came with power. Now, watching him linger too long at the gallery, watching him soften in Sophia's presence, James grew restless. One night, after a dinner meeting, James caught Nathan alone in the parking garage. "She's beautiful," he said, his tone cool. "Charming, I'll even give her that. But you've known her what, 2 months? Nathan, men like us don't get involved with women we barely know, not without consequences." Nathan slammed his car door harder than necessary. "Men like us?" he repeated, his voice edged with steel. "Maybe that's your rule, James, not mine." James didn't flinch. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've seen this before. A woman who doesn't come from your world, suddenly swept into it. They get dazzled, they play the part, but in the end, it costs. It always costs." Nathan's jaw tightened. He hated the implication that Sophia was a gold digger, a distraction, a mistake. "You don't know her," he said, "and you don't know me as well as you think." He drove off before James could reply, but the warning clung to him like smoke. Across the city, Sophia faced her own confrontation. Grace Winters, her oldest friend and confidant, sat opposite her at a Capitol Hill cafe, stirring her coffee with unnecessary force. Grace had watched the slow transformation in Sophia, the glow in her cheeks, the way her eyes brightened when Nathan's name surfaced. "You need to be careful," Grace said bluntly. "He's Nathan Cross, billionaire, tech giant. Men like him don't marry women like us, Sophia. They entertain them." Sophia's chest tightened, though she kept her expression steady. "He's not like that, Grace. He listens. He respects me. Grace cut her off. "He's a man who lives in a different orbit, and orbits don't mix. I don't want to see you broken when he remembers his world and leaves you behind." Sophia didn't argue further. She only stared into her cup, feeling the weight of Grace's words press against the fragile hope she had been nurturing. And then came the blow she hadn't prepared for. 2 weeks later, Sophia walked into the gallery to find an envelope waiting on her desk. Inside was a curt letter from their primary investor, withdrawing all financial support effective immediately. Her vision blurred as she read the lines again, her hands trembling. 3 months rent overdue, promises to artists already made. If she couldn't find new funding, the gallery, her gallery, would shutter before the year ended. By the time Nathan arrived that evening, planning to surprise her with takeout and wine, he found her surrounded by papers, her eyes red from tears. "Sophia," he murmured, crossing the room in 2 strides. He dropped the bags on the table and knelt beside her chair. "What happened?" Through clenched teeth, she explained, the investor gone, the debts piling, the impossible deadlines. Nathan's chest ached watching her fight back tears. Without hesitation, he said, "How much? Tell me what you need and I'll cover it, tonight." Her head snapped up, eyes blazing. "No," she said sharply. "Absolutely not. Sophia, this is your dream, your life's work. I have the resources. Why let it die when I can—" "Because it's not your fight," she interrupted, slamming the papers onto the desk. Her voice trembled, but her spine was steel. "If you write a check, I'll never know if I survived because of my work or because I happened to fall into the orbit of a man rich enough to erase problems with money. That's not who I am, Nathan. I won't let you make me that woman." Silence stretched between them. The storm in her eyes was raw, her pride a fortress. Nathan wanted to argue, to insist, but something in her expression stopped him. He realized if he pushed, he would lose her. Not because she didn't care for him, but because she cared too much about herself, her independence, her dignity. Instead, he exhaled slowly, his voice softer. "Then let me help in another way. No money, just what I know. Business, strategy, connections. We'll find a way together. You don't have to fight alone. Sophia's lips parted, caught between suspicion and something warmer. She wanted to resist, to push him out, but she saw something in his eyes, a willingness not to own her dream, but to stand beside it. And in that moment, the anger gave way to something more dangerous: trust. As Nathan pulled her into his arms, Sophia buried her face against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake. But as James's warning echoed in Nathan's mind and Grace's doubts lingered in Sophia's, both of them knew the truth. If they failed, the cost wouldn't just be money or reputation. It would be each other. The fundraiser was unlike anything the Belltown Gallery had ever seen. Spotlights illuminated the raw brick walls. Music hummed softly beneath the chatter of Seattle's most influential names, and a current of anticipation ran through the air. Sophia had poured herself into every detail, working until dawn with artists, staff, and volunteers. Tonight was the gallery's last chance at survival. Nathan stood near the entrance, scanning the crowd with the instincts of a man who had hosted his share of high-stakes launches. But this wasn't his event. This was Sophia's world. He was here not as the CEO of Cross T Industries, but as the man who had promised to stand beside her. Watching her glide across the room, speaking passionately about the artists she championed, her eyes alight with conviction, Nathan realized that somewhere between their first dance and this night, she had become the axis his life now spun on. But suspense rippled through the evening like an undertow. James Morrison was there, invited by one of the tech investors Nathan had strong-armed into attending. Nathan caught the look in James's eyes, a mixture of skepticism and warning. Across the gallery, Sophia's friend Grace hovered protectively, her gaze darting between them as though waiting for Sophia to fall. Both doubters hung like shadows on the night, reminders of how fragile this bridge between their worlds was. The speeches began. Sophia stepped onto the small stage, her hand steady, though Nathan knew her nerves must have been fraying. "This gallery is not just a building," she said, her voice carrying with quiet power. "It's a place where voices are heard through color, through form, through courage. Tonight isn't about saving a business, it's about saving a home for artists who remind us who we are." Applause thundered, but Nathan's eyes stayed fixed on her. He thought of the deal he had struck months ago, walking into her gallery with a ridiculous proposal about pretending to be his wife. And now, here she was, commanding a room in a way even billionaires couldn't. Donations poured in faster than Sophia dared hope. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 pledged from patrons, entrepreneurs, even rival galleries. By the end of the night, she had raised enough to not only save the gallery, but secure 2 years of programming. She stood backstage afterward, tears streaming freely, overwhelmed. "You did it," Nathan said softly, finding her in the chaos. His hand brushed her cheek, his thumb catching a tear. "Not me, not the money. You." Sophia leaned into his touch, exhaustion and exhilaration tangled in her chest. "You stood beside me," she whispered. "That's all I needed." But the story didn't end with victory. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Nathan led Sophia up a mountain trail just outside the city. The leaves burned gold and crimson around them, the air sharp with pine. She teased him for being overdressed, his designer boots not made for dirt trails, but he only smiled, guiding her toward a clearing with a panoramic view of Mount Rainier. The suspense in Nathan's chest built with each step. Tonight wasn't about survival or appearances. Tonight was about truth. When they reached the overlook, he stopped. Sophia turned, her auburn hair catching the sun, and before she could speak, Nathan dropped to one knee. Her breath hitched. "Sophia Bennett," he began, his voice unsteady but full of conviction. "6 months ago, I walked into your gallery with a desperate idea. I asked you to lie for me. I paid you to be something you weren't. And what began as a performance became the most real part of my life. You taught me what it means to be seen, to be challenged, to be loved, not for what I've built, but for who I am." He opened the velvet box. Inside, a simple solitaire diamond gleamed, catching the morning light. "I don't want an arrangement anymore. I don't want appearances. I want the truth. I want you. Will you, marry me, not as my fake wife, but as my partner, my equal, my forever?" Tears blurred Sophia's vision as she pressed her hands to her mouth. She had imagined this moment, feared it, longed for it, and yet she had kept a secret of her own. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Nathan, there's something you need to know before I answer." He froze, the ring still glinting between them. "The night of Emma's wedding," Sophia's eyes locked onto his, raw and unflinching. "I told your family I had fallen in love with you. It wasn't part of the act. I had already fallen. I tried to convince myself it was just performance, but it wasn't. That night, when I said it, it was the truest thing I've ever spoken. Nathan's heart pounded, relief and awe crashing over him like a wave. His laugh was shaky, almost disbelieving. "That's your confession? That you loved me before I even realized I loved you?" Sophia nodded, tears spilling freely now. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling. "Then say it again. Say it as my fiancé." "Yes," she whispered, then louder, breaking into a radiant smile. "Yes, Nathan Cross, I'll marry you." He rose, pulling her into his arms, and their kiss sealed the promise. High above Seattle, in the wild silence of the mountain, their story came full circle. What began as deception had been remade into something unshakable. A fake wife had become a forever one, and as Nathan whispered against her hair, "Some stories begin with a lie, but end with a truth too powerful to deny." Sophia knew this was only the beginning of theirs.